Did you love the finale? Yeah. I'm so excited to be here because this is one of my favorite shows on television, and this is my favorite cast on television. So let's not waste any time. Melissa Barrera. Hello. Mishel Prada. Anzoategui. Chelsea Rendon.
Yeah.
Carlos Miranda.
Yeah, baby.
Tonatiuh. And Elizabeth de Razzo. You're so pretty, all of you. Hello. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You just wrapped season 3, too.
Yes.
Day before yesterday.
Saturday.
So this is what happens.
So thank you for staying awake for this. I'm sure you're exhausted.
Well, we did have our wrap party last night, well into today.
Yeah, I was going to say AKA this morning.
We woke up to be here.
Great. So that means we can get you to tell some secrets, too, because you're vulnerable. So,
Are we?
First question. This show has been so celebrated by critics and the Latinx community and far beyond the Latinx community. Why do you think that is? What do you think connects with people? Anybody?
Well, it's a good show, if I say so myself. No, I think it's just the authenticity in the way that it's created and in the way that it's written and shot, and the people that you see on television are different kinds of bodies, different kinds of shades of skin, and a different story. So it's refreshing, and I think people want new things. We're like, everyone's doing reboots now, and it's just like, give us something new. Like, give the audience credit. Like, they can take new stories, and so I think that's what people can connect with, just like honesty and fresh faces and like fresh storylines.
It's a breath of fresh air on TV.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's deeply unapologetic. I mean, I think that people resonate with real, and so when people put on airs, or we're all living crazy little lives, and this show just allows you to see into that without any apologies whatsoever.
So let's talk about that, because your characters are all on a growth trajectory. We have starts and stops.
Are you looking at me?
You know. All of you, though. All of you have starts and stops in your character growth. How do you do that? How do you represent that so honestly as actors on screen? And what do you think about the writing makes it work?
I think it's just you're connecting with what you do in life. You know, you don't make a decision like that. New Year's Eve is coming up and everybody makes that, you know, resolution, but it's not like one day you just make a decision and everything changes. Change really comes in steps, and you see that with these characters in a lot of ways. You see them trying and failing and succeeding, and I think that's also part of what resonates with the story, is that you can see yourself reflected, especially for women and Latino women, seeing themselves like really being able to be strong and yet crying in your bed, or being able to make a really strong decision to change and yet somehow falling back into old patterns, but then remaking that decision, I think, is part of it.
And the writing makes it easy for us because the writing is so good, and all these characters are so flawed and so human that it's easy to relate to what they're going through. But also sometimes, like, I'll get a script and I'll be like, Lynn, really? Like, just like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back.
I think that I think that all the time too.
Yeah.
I'll be like, damn, this mother.
Well, for myself, like, I remember that there's really not many people on screen that look like me and that represent the LGBTQIA non-binary specifically, or especially with Eddie, who's butch lesbian. You don't see that, especially because sometimes Latinx gets left out of the conversations when it comes to LGBTQ issues. And I think it's like, it was huge to put a character like Eddie that the audience could relate to as the heart of the show, who suffers so much that the audience gets to see those real special moments that Eddie's by herself, but y'all are with her. And a lot of people could relate to that, the silence that they have to go through in order to be there for their family, or the suffering that goes on that you just go through that nobody really understands when you put into words. So as someone, you know, with nuanced identity can totally relate to that. And I thought it was like, you know, an honor and ancestrally I felt like, okay, now is the time for me to do this, and I better do it justice. Like everybody who identifies like Eddie and who identify like me, that I check my presence, you know, and my present to deliver this. Like I have to ground myself and I have to get rooted and remember what's important to, you know, and that really helps ground me to be able to be honest.
Yeah. And there's no one way to be queer on this show, and not one way to be straight, and not one way to be human. Does anyone want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'd love to take a little stab at that. I think that one of the biggest challenges for me was definitely understanding what I haven't seen on television, and then taking into effect that there is already a microculture that is queer Boyle Heights. And so it's doing honor and paying homage to that, and not having the ego of saying like, oh, this is what I think it's gonna be, or this is what I think it's gonna look like. It's actually, we're like human archaeologists for time. Like we're encapsulating this certain moment in time in this culture. And so for me in particular, one of the conversations that I had both with Tanya, the makeup artist, and the costume department was, I wanted to see a person who lived on the spectrum. So if one episode Marcos is out in his full faggotry and he's having a good time, you know, whatever, the next episode we made sure that he was in something a little bit more butch. The conversation over facial hair was also like a big thing because they didn't want it at first. And I was like, well, he lives in a Boyle Heights. He can't have his plumes out every day. He needs some coat of armor. And so to see a person who is both femme and mask all in one is refreshing, because that exists in the world.
Yeah.
Well, and also I think Tona grew up in Boyle Heights, and it's like his family is still there. And I think that that's also an important aspect that you bring as well.
Yeah.
So a few of you are from LA. Chelsea, you're from LA as well.
Montebello, born and raised, but you know, all my family was in Boyle Heights, East LA, so we're all around there.
And Baldwin Park.
And Baldwin Park.
Come on.
In case you forgot.
I'm like, we lived there for a long time, but I don't rep that. I rep Montebello.
JK.
My mom still lives in Baldwin Park, but I rep Montebello. Sorry. No, but it was really beautiful, and I've mentioned this a couple times, but the first day of season 1, the scene with the Vida and me talking shit to the sisters was filmed on the block that my mom grew up. She actually grew up in the duplexes connected to that. And she went to set and cried.
I would cry.
And she was like, wait, I grew up there and you're filming there? And she was like so emotional. She was like, my mom, well, it was her mom and her 6 brothers and sisters lived there, and it was $50 rent in 1960. Like, so to be like really full circle of filming there season 1, like it was super surreal. So it's great to be connected to, like, you know, the roots of the neighborhood.
And so this show is about gentrification, right? Gentrification from a particularly Latino community. When upwardly mobile Latinos move in and rents go up and everything goes up. And Elizabeth, your character is fighting the good fight against gentrification. What did it feel like to represent that?
Sorry, I get really bad stage fright. So I'm gonna just look at you.
Okay, right here, girl, right here.
I know. Well, I mean, I'd been keeping up with what's happening here and what's happening in Austin, because it's kind of something that's been popping up like everywhere, like even in Portland. I think that was one of the first places that I watched Kumaya Bell. Yeah, he had like this really great 1 hour series about Portland, and sorry, I'm getting so nervous, but about Portland. And so I'd been keeping up with that because I just think that it's something that, you know, really hurts our community and other communities that are of color. And when I saw that my character was going to be fighting that, I felt like that I had to put everything that I could, like all of that anger, all of that pain that I felt in seeing like my gente being, you know, pushed out from where they're currently living. So I put that all in the role. Yeah.
No, but then it's also just we do research. Like it wasn't until I booked Vida that I learned about the Chavez Ravine and how people were displaced for the Dodger Stadium. And like I'm someone that goes to Dodger games and I'm like woohoo. And like ever since I found out, I'm like damn, like I'm here, but like I don't want to be here. But then like
So here.
I want to be here. You know what I mean? Like so it's weird. And so like and it's going on right now with the stadium that's going up in Inglewood. You know, so it's like it's something that affects not only brown people, it affects everyone, and it's happening everywhere. And that's why that's another reason why the story is so well received, because everybody can relate to it. Whether you're in San Francisco, whether you're in Miami, wherever you are, there is some sort of gentrification happening and gentrification happening.
Yeah, and I think, well, in season 3, you guys, you'll see, because we go even deeper into that because the sisters are gentrifiers, and the bar, and as you see at the end of season 2, it starts doing really well. Yeah. So in season 3, you see that effect and what the activists are, you know, fighting so hard to get them out and protesting. But the funny thing is that there's a fine line of, how can I say this without spoiling anything? Am I gonna get in trouble? Am I gonna get in trouble?
All I want to say is that Lynn called herself a gentrifier. Point to me.
Well,
Point Marty.
Point, Marty.
but what I mean is that I think gentrification is kind of inevitable, because it's just the natural order of the world, and it evolves, and there's higher demand and want for people that are moving across the country to chase opportunities and dreams and stuff, and so it's a natural thing that happens. But when you create the consciousness of at least know what's happening and try to support like the local business. Hi, Doña Lupe.
Yeah.
Hello. Hi. I love you.
I need a limpia later.
She's the best. But there's like little things that you can do to, you know, try to protect the people a little bit more, and
I think it's also kind of understanding that there's not one answer. There's so many different points of view, and I think specifically with the bar, it's like, you know, do we want the corporations to get it, or do you want the sisters who are from that neighborhood that are just going to adjust to what is changing? And you have these like Latina business owners getting protested by their local community, and what does that mean? And I don't think there's really any answers, but it, you know, at least creates conversation and creates awareness, like Meli was saying.
Well, yeah, and then, like how Meli said, like buying from the mom and pop shops. It's like we have so much power, and that even stems to Hollywood. Like I remember when my mom went to go see Cesar Chavez when the movie came out at the AMC in Montebello. She talked to a family that they were going to see like the Marvel movie that was out that weekend, and she said there was like 3 people in the theater with her, and it was opening weekend. So it's like we also have to put our money where our mouth is. Right. When it's buying from mom and pop businesses, from Latinx owned businesses, from showing up day one, opening night. You know what I mean? Like we have so much power, and we have to do that, because if we don't, then we're giving the money to the big corporation, and then they lose their business. And then we're mad when they lose their business, but it's like, well, you didn't go. When was the last time you went into that shop? Right. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like we as a community have to do the right thing as well.
Go ahead.
So I was just going to say, I do think that gentrification is inevitable when you're in an unregulated, unfettered capitalistic society, right? So I just want to say that, like, yes, currently in the United States, there are no regulations when it comes to these things, and so yeah, and inevitably, we're going to end up pushing people out. I mean, that's just a cultural thing that humans have been doing. We've been fighting for space for forever. Boyle Heights it was a Russian community, and then it became a Jewish community, and then it became Latinx. So it evolves. That's very true. But in the current state that we're under, I think that it's under an incredible attack because there's no safeguards to help them. And the burden of representation does fall on us as a community, but if mass media is only publicizing white culture, then how the heck are we supposed to even know that these neighborhoods even exist to support them to begin with?
Tonatiuh just took you to school, and let's remember that Marcos is just got his PhD, I believe. So you know.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you know.
What I love
so
about, I just want to say one thing, like about the show is just the characters all represent like a lot of what could be one point of view.
Yeah.
You know, especially like when you have the Nelson character play the developer. You know, the one who works with the bigger company. You know, and he's representing like all these people that is, you know, the face, and then you have the Mari character, and so all of that, you know, it could be argued that gentrification is pretty much well planned through real estate market, you know. So it's like this thing that with the character we could talk about all kinds of these points with the capitalism, you know what I mean? We could talk about it, and that's the beauty of it too, you know.
So the show definitely has that lens of social criticism. It also has a specifically female, a specifically Latinx, a specifically queer lens. So what has that meant to you, knowing that, especially for you two, let's start there, knowing that there are queer Latinas behind the scenes writing your stories and then directing you on stage?
Yeah, I think
she plays the queer one. So whenever they ask questions like that, I'm like the straight one in the show. So let me just.
I feel like you see a lot of the diversity behind the camera in what's in the scripts, and you see these conversations coming out. Even something as simple as in. The third episode of season 2, you know, kind of Emma being ostracized for choosing not to identify, and it's also just kind of like, let people have their process, whatever that is, like whether that's a right or wrong thing. Worry about where you are and how you identify and figure that out before you start policing other people. I think also another point that was, you know, it's just a small line, but when Emma wants Marcos to move in, and Eddie's like, you know, the gay men, they're not nice to us. Mean girls.
Los gaycitos.
Los gaycitos. And I think that comes from a writer's room where there are those conversations and those ideas, and we, you know, get given those railroad tracks and we bring it to life. But so yeah, kind of going with what you're saying is that it is definitely a part of it, and also learning different things, because there's not one way to be any certain way, and Emma can be different with as a sister than she might be as a, you know, business owner, or might be as a employee or whatnot. So all of that stuff ends up on the screen.
Yeah, a lot of the situations that happen on the show, the conversations are like they happen in real life to one of the writers. Like, it's so specific, the situations that they go through, and because it's rooted in such reality, I think that's why people identify so much, because it's all true. It's conversations or thoughts that we all have, and it's just they don't really get addressed on TV. It's groundbreaking in that sense, and I think that's why our show does so well, and that's why the queer community loves our show and appreciates it for just showcasing the community in like the way in a real way, in a very ample way. Yeah. Is that a word? Ample. Yeah. And amplio. And amplio. I don't know. In Spanish, it's a word.
Ample bosoms.
Yeah.
Ample bosoms. Yeah.
Use it in a sentence.
Okay, great.
And Lynn's sexuality is also a key part of that show. So I know that mostly panels talk about the queer representation, but Lynn, as a strong female protagonist who has a connection to her own sexuality, and then Mari's character who's sort of discovering where she is in almost a power dynamic, and an unequal power dynamic with a partner. Those are two interesting stories that are that we're following along in the show. Do you want to talk to that?
Well, I think and that's the funniest thing for me. I remember so many people in my DMs being like, why is Mari so stupid? Why is she still with Rado? Why is she this? And I'm like, you remember being that damn young and being that damn stupid, talking to the person you should not have been talking to. So why are you talking shit about Mari? Like, she's young. It's her first time being in love. We've all had that first love when you kind of like don't see something and then you're like, damn, I didn't see that. Like, you know what I mean? So that for me was so important where she was this badass, she's this badass chingona activist, but yet she's so vulnerable and like she's still naive to so many things, especially when it comes to men. And that stems from the machismo-ness that she has in the household. Like she couldn't do a lot of things, so she doesn't even know. She's like, wait, what? There's a sun outside, you know? And I think that's something that, you know what I mean? Like you either see the badass female that's like super strong. It's like Sex in the City. Like Miranda was the one that had the badass strength, career driven, and she had the family. But everyone else just wanted the family or wanted the career or you know what I mean? Like, and so I feel like Mari is that where she's badass, but then she's learning and she's vulnerable, and it's a conversation starter. And just to like have that is really cool. And I always argue with people. I'm like, yo, don't talk shit. You've been there too, you know. And that's really important. And she again got eaten out for the first time. Didn't know what that felt like, freaking out, like, oh, wait, what's this? Oh, wait. You know what I mean? Like, and it was so vulnerable, but then it was also powerful at the same time because she wanted it. She just didn't know she wanted it, but then she was living it and she was like, okay. You know, and then he's bringing her tortas and stuff, you know. He was trying. He gets a little A for effort.
I think all the characters have different relationships to sex in the show. And obviously the show, every sex scene is through the female gaze, and the women are usually in a power position. A lot of times when you see sex scenes on different TV shows, it's like the man is the one that's getting pleasured by the woman. And I feel like in our show, the women are fully like, give me what I want. Like episode 1, you see Johnny and Lynn in the staircase behind the bar, and Johnny's like going at it, and she's like, yeah, because you know what I want, and I know, you know what I know. And not until she's finished does she let him, you know, do the sex. You know, like you have to finish, you have to, Laura! Hi, oh my God, this is such a cool reunion. Sorry, I'm like, squirrel.
Do the sex is the best phrase ever spoken on a SAG panel. Thank you.
Do the sex. But what I love about Lynn is that she's so sexually liberated and so like down to explore and just like figure out what she likes the most and down to try anything. And I think it's cool to see a woman on TV not be afraid of any of that and be so comfortable with her body and with. I learned a lot from Lynn because like I'm Mexican.
I grew up Google stuff.
I grew up like
Pegging.
just like all porn.
Yeah.
If anyone like looked at my history, I had to do a lot of research. I was like, wait, what? What is a rim job? What? Ass eating, that's a thing? I was like,
I know.
there you go. You are
Private
welcome.
tabs, just private tabs, and you'll be all right.
I did recommend the show to my mom, and she was like, whoa there.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
It has to come with a warning.
So let's talk a little bit about Johnny. Johnny is such a heartthrob, but he's sort of the other side, right? Because he is obsessed with this woman who keeps wrecking his life. Yeah. So how do you play that, like, on one side, you know, stereotypical machista Latino guy who like totally screws up his sister's life and gets her kicked out of the house.
How dare you.
And then on the other hand, you play this like heartfelt, like just
lovesick dog.
That's right. How do you do that?
I mean, he's in love, you know? I think he's just in love, and people do dumb things when you're in love.
Stop attacking me.
Yeah. But I don't know, you know, I've been in love, you know? I know what it's like to have feelings for somebody and feel like, you know, so it's like, I mean, I get it, man. You know, like it's such a universal feeling. Everybody's been in love at one point, and everybody's been heartbroken. I'm sure once or twice, or I live in misery.
Oh my God.
Okay, wait, then what about me? What's your excuse for me?
Well, you know what? Johnny's like kind of your everyman kind of guy. He's like standard. This is how he grew up. He's kind of selfish. He's just kind of worried about himself, making sure that everything he's doing is in order. And along the way, you know, he's looking out for you, really, but it just, I mean, sometimes it just comes off the wrong way, you know, like, I mean,
As in getting her kicked out of the house.
that was not Johnny's intention, though, you know what I'm saying? Even though myself, personally, again, like, when we get the script, I read that, like, damn, I wouldn't have done that, like, I would have, but, you know, it's just, in the heat of the moment, you know, things happen. It's just that trial and error, right? That, like you said, everybody's changing, everyone's growing, and there's no growth without trial and error. You know what I mean?
There's something really special about Johnny. I mean, he's a great character. Who doesn't love Johnny? But I think there's something to be said. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
I mean, yes. But I feel like the fact that he forgives Lynn over and over and over says a lot about like what big of a heart he has, and
It's
like,
love.
and that love is real, and you know, sometimes you're just star-crust lovers, or what is it?
That's it.
That's it. I said star-crust.
Star-crossed lovers.
But you know, sometimes it's just like it's just not meant to be, or it is. I don't know. It's complicated.
If you believe in something, you give it a shot always, right?
Yeah.
You don't ever give up on it. So he doesn't. When she comes back around, it's like, yeah, you forget everything. You know, it's like, let's start here now.
So relationships are so the center of this show, and this
Yeah,
sister
definitely.
relationship, and then the relationship of Eddie, the maybe stepmother, maybe Eddie you play Eddie, who is about 10 years older than you are as well.
I mean, I just look 10 years younger than I am.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Can't help it.
There you go. But talk to me, Mishel, about this relationship with, first of all, your sister character, right? And then the relationship with Eddie as well.
Well, I think what's really beautiful about someone like Emma is that she really pulled herself up from her bootstraps. Like, you know, a lot of people that are in neighborhoods like this don't get to kind of climb the corporate ladder, and it takes a lot of work to get yourself out of there. I mean, like Donna was bringing up, just even the way that like our corporate America works, it's not easy. Everything's stacked against you, and I think that she's really worked hard to shed what she feels are the parts of her that in the beginning, like, she's kind of ashamed of, but you realize it's like she felt rejected by this. So when she comes back, she's faced with these mirrors. I mean, in her house that she was exiled from is the embodiment of the part of her that she feels she was exiled for. And there's this person that is like the most like stereotypical, you know, person who it really just wants to love Emma, and Emma's like, no. And then you have Lynn, who is kind of just the opposite of her and is also kind of trying to love her in that way, and you just kind of fall into this cycle of like, how do you control? She can control the love that she gives, but she can't control the love that she receives, and that's where her pain comes from. So it's going back, and when they decide to stay and essentially become bar owners, it's really her staying and deciding, I'm going to reclaim my childhood, reclaim where I've come from, and reclaim this just this family. But it's hard, you know. It's not easy. So with that relationship, I think that's really the cycle, and then each of them kind of pushes each other in, like, to grow. You know, we see Lynn even just in Emma kind of stepping back, and Lynn really blossoming and realizing the power that Lynn has and the ability that she has as a woman that's changing and growing at a really important place. And both of them, you know, we think that, I think I saw this meme where it was like, we think that, it was like these tarot cards, and we think that like spiritual enlightenment is like the sun, and it's like a little baby on a horse with the sun in the back. But the reality, it's the tower, and it's everything's crumbling down. And we see that, I think, with these three. I mean, they're in each other's lives for a moment of growth.
That's beautiful. It's deep. So let's talk a little bit about process and journey. So I know that often these conversations have in the audience folks that are still sort of, trying to get that first big role. Now that you've had this sort of hit show under your belt, right? And you're looking at what's next whenever this ends. How are you planning that trajectory? What are you hoping? You have something great happening. You're on Riverdale. A lot of you are also working on multiple shows. Can you talk a little bit about that, just being an actor in LA?
Well, it's hard.
Man, how much time do we got?
Not gonna
3
lie.
minutes on the clock.
We're all still auditioning. We're all still actors. Even if you have a show, you're still doing self-tapes. You're still going to auditions.
The grind don't never
the grind
stop.
doesn't stop, even if you got a show. And again, we film 2 months out of the year, so we're auditioning and trying to get more work all that other time.
Yeah, but I think the most important part of this is to know that the hustle never ends.
Yep.
Obviously, but also, I think for all of us, being on the show changed us and changed the way that we think and the kinds of projects that we want to do, because this show means so much to people. It's not just entertainment. Right. It's hopefully a movement, and it means a lot because a lot of people have never seen themselves on screen until this show. That's something that we hear a lot. And so I know that for me moving forward, I just want to keep doing meaningful things. I want to steer clear of anything that's stereotypical of Latinos. No thank you to any narco-related things, because we have enough of that, and it does a lot of damage, even though it's kind of funny, yeah, but it's also gross, and it does horrible things. In Mexico, it's just horrible right now. And I honestly think that they draw inspiration from what they see on their shows, because they're glorified and people are so obsessed with it. And so we have to kind of stop. But I know that we're all looking into creating our own content, into going into producing, and we're looking for stories to continue on Tanya's path that she's taught us so well, of giving opportunities to not only the Latinx community, but people of color in front and behind the cameras, giving different kinds of stories, and yeah, just continuing on that so that we can be a part of the change that's starting slowly but surely.
And I know I've felt really connected with the idea of we're not fighting any fight that's different than what's gone on for centuries, essentially. It's just our turn. And the further that we push it, the easier it is for the people that come behind us to step just a little bit further and to normalize these situations and to be unapologetic and not to be quiet about it, but to be good and making sure that we're not just sitting there with a hand out. We're actually showing up with something that's valuable and important and necessary. And sometimes that means being bad for a while, not being good, and moving into that direction so that we are claiming our power, even as actors, walking into a room, not hoping that they give you the job, but walking into a room knowing that you've come prepared and you're offering these incredible ingredients. And if it's going to work with that movie or show, then it will. And if it doesn't negate your ingredients and what you walk in with.
Oh, yes. Applause. Before I forget, because I this is something that I think is really important to say, especially to a group of people like y'all, because we're the future of this industry. So right now there's a lot of talk of diversity and diversity hires. And people are now finally, because we're being vocal and because we're demanding our jobs and demanding our stories and our voices being heard, a lot of studios and networks are oh, we have to kind of check that box, and we kind of have to give or try to make a pilot out of that, and a lot of people I've heard are mad about that, are mad about I don't want to be the diversity hire. I get it, but I also I guess I just think differently. My mentality is I'm gonna fully take advantage of that, and then I'm gonna fucking demonstrate that they really hired me because I'm so fucking good, and I'm gonna keep that job, and I'm gonna keep going. So if you get the opportunity, just take it. Yeah, don't be like, oh, but don't feel bad for yourself because you're like, I'm not diversity high. You fucking have a job. So just like make the most of it. That's all I wanted to say.
I love that. Thank you.
And I also just really quick, there's a lot of power in your nose. Just even for yourself.
Oh, your nose or your
In your
N-O.
nose.
N-O. Yeah, I know. I was like, in our
no,
nose.
I guess. In the times
Deep.
you say no. Because I know even for me, I didn't have an agent until I booked Vida. And I remember the beginning of that year kind of going in, and I got close to a few things. And I just was like, I'm not going to go in there and beg for them. I'm going to book my own show and then I'll show up. It was kind of a joke. 9 months later, I did. But it was also kind of like, just really be intentional with your career and with what you want, and be very clear on it, because there's just a power when you walk into a room knowing that where you're going and what you want. And just because if you're going from San Francisco to LA, you don't get out in Reno and you're like, why am I here? This is right. You're like, no, I'm going to LA. I'm just in Reno first, and you just kind of go through and know that where you're going, because it gives you a power and a presence that's so beautiful.
Thank you. For reals, that's so true. For myself, I do have that statistic in my head that people that look like me, that identify as myself, have 3 to 4 times the unemployment rate than cis white men. But I have to also have the mentality of I am in charge of what I'm bringing into the room, into any room I walk into, any relationship, and that is something that it can fuck with you. And what's important is I've been through some teams, some different rep teams, and I finally feel like I got with a management company that understands me, and that took a long time to understand, as far as that Vida has afforded me to be able to get to that level of management, and also that people could look at me and be like, you're gonna always go for the non-binary LGBTQIA plus roles, and now I'm like, no, how about for the male role? How about for the female role? How about you just open up your mind to say, now is the time that you can see someone like me come and deliver the performance in the audition, You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's how it is, and they see it. And I auditioned for a male role today, and I was having those doubts, like, this maybe not. I mean, I feel bad and this and that, and I was like, now I'm at a different point in my life, and I have to change along with where I'm at, and it's here, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna change what I have around me, what my support system is, what I need to be able to say yes to those opportunities, and to go in as a human being and deliver it.
And also, like Melissa had said, there's the whole diversity hire thing that's going on right now, and so we have more opportunities, but we also have to be ready for that.
Yeah.
We can't show up to an audition and not know our lines and expect to get the job because, we're brown, they're gonna go different. We have to show up, so that they have no excuse to not give us a job. Right. If they're putting a casting out for a Latina character and all the Latinas are going in there half-assing it, and then they give it to a white girl and then we're all mad, it's like, that bitch showed up. She knew her lines. She was off book. And then we're all like, oh, well, I don't know. I guess it's Latina, so I'm going to get it. You know what I mean?
An actor prepares.
And, we have to prepare. But no, but I'm saying, that's a thing where Melissa said, you have to take full advantage of that and take advantage of that and be prepared. We're all actors and we all try to work on projects and stuff. And then your friend's trying to pitch you this and do this, but they want to pay you $100. And you're like, the rate's $900, but I could do you a favor, but not that much of a favor. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. Latinos have the thing where they want to half-ass stuff, and then they get mad when it's not bought, or people aren't respecting it, or it didn't come out good, it didn't get into this festival. But we have to show up. If we don't show up, we only have ourselves to blame. So that's where us as a community and as keeping each other accountable. If my friend showed me a short and I'm like, it was written well, but I don't think it was executed well. You know what I mean? Or actually, I saw my friend short the other day, and I was like, yo, the cinematography was ridiculous. Some of the dialogue was a little off, but it was great overall. But being able to be honest and accepting that. You know what I mean? Like, so just keeping each other accountable, and then also knowing your no's, like, and having the power in that. Like, I was working on Shameless. Shut up. I was working on Shameless, and originally when I got the audition, there was nudity. So I talked to my manager. I was like, damn, I like this show, but I don't want to get naked. And then it's like, okay, cool, say no. So we turned down the audition. And then I ended up getting an offer with no nudity. So I didn't know that I even had, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't know that I had that power. And who knows if other people, I actually know a couple other people that went to an audition for it or auditioned for it, and they felt weird about the nudity. But it's like, just use your voice. If you don't want to do nudity, then say, no, I don't want to do nudity. And then see where the world takes you. But you have to have that strength in yourself and know what you do and you don't want to do. Like, I remember being younger and I was auditioning for this movie with sex trafficking, and there was a scene where like the girl got spanked with the paddle and she was in a leather suit, and everything else in the movie I was okay with, but not that scene. So I had went to the audition, and when I got the call back, my manager was like, oh, don't worry about it, it's a female director. If you book it, we could figure it out down the line. And I was like, I don't trust this bitch. Like, so I purposely fucked up in the audition. And I remember I was 18 years old, and when I didn't book it, my mom's like, you fucked up on purpose, didn't you? I was like, yeah. And she's like, I knew you were gonna book it and you fucked up, da 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 da. But then I didn't get called back into that office for a couple years. So I fucked myself up because I thought I'm taking power, but I really wasn't. But so now, years later, I was able to say no, and then it ended up getting me a booking anyway, you know? So it's just learning.
So this question, we've talked about representation and authenticity. You're talking about authenticity and knowing yourself. And so how does this show achieve authentic representation? How do you want the next shows you're looking at to achieve authentic representation? How do we keep this going?
If it's a show about brown people, have brown people writing it.
Hire the brown people to write it.
It's that simple.
And queers.
It's that simple.
Nothing
literally
about us without us. Like,
And it's not just enough to have one person on the team who's brown. We don't want to tokenize people, all right? Like, we have several, like, all of us are Latinx. We're all radically different and think about the world in different ways. Not all brown people think the same. Not all queer people think the same. Mm-hmm. So, and I think owning that and walking into the room knowing who you are, what you came from, and what you can deliver is super important, because they hired you for your process. They hired you for your knowledge and the character that you're creating. But if you're not going to take the power, time is money. So someone will make those decisions for you. So are you going to be empowered yourself, or are you going to let somebody else tell the story for you?
So, last question. And so I have questions from the audience. So, and a couple of the last few have been from the audience. But what is the thing that you know today, after 3 years on the show, 3 seasons of the show, that you wish you would have known 5 years ago? So before you had booked it. What is the thing? I'm going to start with you. No? Too much, Elizabeth?
Wait, what was your question?
What is the thing that you know? I love you. What is the thing you know today, after 3 seasons of Vida, that you wish you would have known 5 years ago before you had even booked it?
Well, working on the show, it really changed my perspective because I come from a town in Texas which is predominantly Latino or Latinx. It's 98%. Wow. And at all levels of our community, whether it's the police station, sheriff, mayor, they're all Latinx. Like, so when I came to LA, I didn't like have all of these experiences that like other people like myself have experienced in LA and in other places. So I was very, I guess, like blind to all of those things. I had a big blind spot. I never thought that I had to embrace like being like Latina or Latinx. It wasn't until I moved here, and that's what this show has taught me. It opened up my eyes to something that I had never been exposed to because I lived in a bubble, like complete bubble. And I'm so appreciative and just feel so I mean, I know it sounds like corny, but blessed that I was in this show because it completely like opened my mind in ways that and my heart and everything about me. Like now the things that I care about and that I want to fight for are completely different things that I wanted to fight for 5 years ago. And I was like so unaware and like, just like, you know, like whatever, like hashtag blessed, you know?
and now you're like for real blessed.
Yeah, no, I'm like for real. Oh my gosh, I was able to talk. Okay, bye.
Okay.
Yoli, Elizabeth.
I love you.
How about you, Tonatiuh?
I think when I first started, I was so humbled to the point that I didn't see my own worth. I was just grateful for everything and let other people tell me what to do and choose that. And I think in this process, I discovered my voice. And I learned to love myself and to trust in my own intuition. And that doesn't mean I'm right all the time. It doesn't mean that I'm not collaborating, because that's obviously not true. But I think I'm operating more so from who I am and just being unapologetic in that and allowing people just to see me. And if it's a fit, great. And if it's not, still great. Because who I am isn't defined by my work. It's defined by my words and my actions. And this is what I love to do.
Beautiful. Carlos?
Something that I didn't know 5 years ago.
That you learned in this process.
In this process.
Or on this
Well,
panel.
On this.
Well, I guess I don't know, like what I literally learned on it during Vida was about these the terms and the non-binary and all that I was not familiar with. I wasn't. I was not. It's not. I'm not gonna say that I wish I knew 5 years ago, because I appreciate that it was something I learned. You know what I mean? But it's something that I was not familiar with, and it's, you know, I respect you. You know what I mean? Like I always try to be respectful of, you know, how you want to be.
Thank you for that.
You know, the terms, the terminologies of the day, and so that's something that I learned, you know, being on the like with these people, and you know, I try to live with that, you know what I mean? Like go by that.
I think a lot of people learned about
yeah,
that.
Yeah. So
I
it's
think,
yeah.
I think you're not the only one. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you for saying that.
Sure.
Talking to a room full of actors, I learned to know my worth and know that it's okay to ask for more if you feel that you're worthy of more. And it's okay to ask for the little things that, like, I think especially Latinos or all minorities, we have that like, oh, I don't belong, or that like imposter syndrome or whatever, where it's like, oh, I should be lucky to be here. And like my mom instilled that in me growing up. So if I booked something, my reps always wanted to ask for more money, and she's like, no, just take it. No, just take it. And now I'm like, wait a second, I do deserve more, or I deserve to get what that person's getting, or I deserve to be top of show instead of just this guest. You know what I mean? Like things like that. And me and Mishel have the same manager, and I remember when I first signed with him, the first booking I got was like, he's like, oh, what's your quote? And I was like, I don't have a quote yet. And he's like, oh, we're gonna change that. And like he thought I was a bigger name or something than I was, so I was like, nah, I don't got a quote yet. Like it was for a movie specifically. But he's also someone that's really championed me and like pushed me to be like, he doesn't say this, but this is how I hear it. Like, nah, bitch, you deserve more. We're going to ask for more. We're going to get you more. You know what I mean?
That's not how he talks to you.
He doesn't say it like that, but that's how I hear it. Like, all right, bitch, get your shit together. You know, and
you can work with her manager.
Weird, he talks that way to me.
No, but even if you don't get the more that you wanted, at least you asked, and at least you tried, and then maybe next time you will get it. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just, that's something for me that I've learned my worth, and when it comes to that, like, of contracts and this and that. Oh, these little things that I didn't know about, like, that I know about now.
The worst they're gonna do is say no to you, and we're actors. We hear no all the time. So
I know. What are we scared of?
like,
No.
Well, you already got the no. If you don't ask, you already got the no. So you might as well ask.
Don't shut the door on yourself.
Yeah, if
right?
you don't advocate for yourself, who is?
All right, who's next?
I mean, I really do wish I would have known some contractual stuff, but this is my first big, role. But I think sometimes we're like, I do this, but too focused on not making mistakes or want to not make mistakes or what could I have done if I could have just been perfect, and what is perfect. I wouldn't change anything, because that's the gift, is the learning and what you're going to take to the next thing. I think we're too hard on ourselves. I was too hard on myself, and I'm really learning how to just be enjoying the process, even the mistakes, and to be like, okay, this is for a reason, and it's my choice to beat myself up or to say I'm an actor and I am proud.
Mishel?
Yeah, I echo that too. I think this was my first big show and job on this level, and I think there was definitely a lot that sometimes I was just like, oh my gosh, am I doing this right? I don't know. Like every end of every season I was convinced that I'd ruined the show, like legitimately convinced, and then I was like, oh, it was fine, okay, cool. And I think part of that kind of, I guess, lends itself to this idea of 5 years ago, looking for something like ancestors or mentors outside of myself, and being like, what can they teach me? How can I learn? How can I be better? How can I follow that path? Like, give me a star to kind of follow. And I think, in the last year especially, I've really sat in the space of like, I am an ancestor. I want to be a good ancestor, and I want the people that come after me, I want to leave little trails for them to follow, and really learning that we are ancestors of today walking among us, and everything that we do to be conscious of, we're going to fail. Like some days we're not going to feel awesome, and some days we're going to feel like gods, but embracing that and really just being conscious of, we are becoming those little trails for other people to follow, and no matter where we are, whether, because I was the same person when I was just doing commercials, and now I'm getting to do a show.
Melissa?
I feel like ditto. I don't know if I don't have that experience, but I support you. And ditto. No, well, I'm not as deep as you about ancestors, but I agree about leaving the door open for people to like creep in behind you once you get your foot in the door, and make sure to like leave it with a bookmark or something so that it doesn't close. But I feel like it's crazy to think that like 5 years ago, I was doing a telenovela in Mexico, and I was, I never thought that I would be in the US 5 years later, 3 seasons into an amazing show. And I think what I've learned now after 3 seasons is that when you want to do something and like an idea pops into your head and you're like, what if I did that? Or like you see someone else or like someone you admire in the industry and they're doing other things and you're like, maybe I should do that. But then the little voice creep, the little vampire in your head is like, nah, you don't know how to do that. Like maybe in a few years. You're never gonna feel ready enough or good enough or that you know enough. So you just gotta go for it because you learn along the way. You gotta take those risks. You gotta like amplify your, I'm using ample again. That's my favorite word today. It was my word of the day in my kitchen counter.
I thought you were gonna say toilet paper.
No. Pee Wee Herman, like
I thought
totally
of Friends.
like, oh.
Joey got the toilet paper. Chandler
That's
got the
true.
toilet paper for Joey with the words on it or something. That's where my name.
Other great shows.
Yeah. But what I mean to say is just go for it and find the people that are gonna go on adventures with you and like help you write that show or help you produce that movie or direct that short or whatever it is that you want to do. Find the people that are going to do it with you, and you got to pave your own path and you learn along the way. You'll be surprised to see how actually more ready you are than you thought to do things. And just we're in a great moment in time, I think, in this industry where there are so many streaming services and like platforms, and we have the internet and like web series, and like now Facebook, you can watch shows on it, on YouTube, and like, so there's a lot of demand for content. People are hungry for things, so it's the perfect time for us to be like, oh, you want a show about Latinos? I got one. Y'all want it? I got one. You know, so just go for it.
Let me. You asked a question earlier about like what's it like to be an actor in LA. Let me just say one thing, is that it's hard. The fact is it's hard, and not it's real. Like it's hard, man. And but we're all actors, right? If you, like you said, man, if you have a passion for something, just do it. Just keep doing it, and you're gonna eventually, you'll a door's gonna open and an opportunity is gonna present itself. And
He was living in his car.
yeah.
hold
I mean,
on,
but
You could book the job. I didn't have my lights on when I booked Vida. Like you have to sometimes.
But it's not. But going on though, it's like there are right now, especially right now, it's such a great time to be an actor, especially an actor of color. You know what I mean? Because there are, as I'm kind of reiterating
roles.
everything that everyone's saying, but it's like there are all these new opportunities, all these platforms and everything. So there's so much more work. So as I said, that we get no all the time. We'll probably hear a lot more yeses too at the same time. You know what I mean? And just keep going, just keep doing it. Just never doubt yourself. You know what I mean? Like, because
Don't compare yourself to others. That's the death trap.
Yeah.
That will kill you.
Damn.
That
Stay in your
will
lane.
kill you.
Damn,
Stay
don't
in
go
your lane.
down that rabbit hole. Don't do it, because we all.
When did you ask that? Because I'm not aware. Did that go over my head?
it was
or did that?
I think he paraphrased. He paraphrased it.
Okay, I'm like, she didn't ask that question.
No, she didn't.
But she did in a different way. Okay.
He's hearing the subtext.
Okay.
No. Well, it was like, what's it like to be an actor in LA for us, right? And like, what's
But she didn't say that.
She did.
I
She
did.
did.
I
didn't say his thing.
I think I blanked out. I'm like, wait, I'm being an annoying sister, as in you're stupid or I'm stupid.
No.
I missed that question. I'm so wait, what?
I think our time is up.
Oh shit. All right. So
But thank you so much for being here. Thank you
for having us.
Thank you for
Thank you guys for being here.
more seasons. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karla.